You can use this technique on any bag really if you want a pieced strap. So you should have 2 pieces of exterior and 2 pieces of lining. What you're going to do is draw a line on the right side of one exterior strap, 1/4 inch or 6mm away from one short end, and on the wrong side of the lining. So let's do both of the exterior pieces together to start with, and then we'll do both of the lining pieces. So if anybody remembers where I put my, oh there it is, chalk marker, there we go. Okay, so we'll just draw a line on the right side of the exterior, 1/4 inch away from one short end, 6mm, and the same on the other exterior piece. And then on the wrong side of the 2 lining pieces. So exactly the same, 1/4 inch or 6mm. Okay, now what we are going to do, I'll hang on to this because we're going to need this again. What we're going to do is place one exterior piece right sides up, and you can see I've got the 1/4 inch line there, and then one lining piece on top right sides down, and we're going to line these up according to these 1/4 inch lines. So you should have 1/4 inch or 6mm of exterior poking out from underneath, and you should have 1/4 inch or 6mm of lining overhanging. And let's add a pin just to hold these bits together. What we're going to do now is draw a line from where they intersect at the top here to where they intersect at the bottom. Okay, like that. Better add another pin just in case I go a bit squiffy while I'm sewing. Okay, so all we're going to do now is sew along this line using our regular stitch length, and I'm going to back stitch at the start and at the end. Okay, now before we do any kind of cutting, just fold that back and double check that it is indeed going in one continuous line and it's not pointing off in some random direction. Well, it won't be a random direction, it'll be a right angle, but if you've got it right, then it should go in one continuous line. Grab hold of your ruler and pop your ruler on that 1/4 inch line, that sorry, not 1/4 inch line, the diagonal line, the line that you've just sewn along, but put your 1/4 inch line on it. So your ruler, the 1/4 inch line on your ruler is on that line we've sewn along, and we're going to slice along here, leaving ourselves just a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to trim these triangles off, and then we should be left with a lovely 2-tone strap. Ta-da! Except this is about half the length we want, so we need to repeat the process. So let's, oh excuse me, I thought I was going to sneeze. Let's press this seam allowance open to start with, the seam that we've just sewn. You can also use this if you are making a bag with a really long strap and you haven't got enough fabric, or you're trying to use what you have and you haven't got quite enough fabric. You can use this technique to join 2 pieces of fabric together, even if it's the same fabric, but maybe your fabric is not long enough. Use that technique and piece a strap. Right, that looks great. I really like that. So now we'll top stitch either side of the seam 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from the edge using the regular stitch length or top stitching stitch length, whichever you prefer. And the other side as well, and this just helps to keep those seam allowances down and out of the way so they're not too bulky. There we go. Okay, excellent, fantastic. So let's do the same with the other pieces of strap, and then we'll join them all together. So again, with our line right sides up, and then place this one on top. Oh, right sides facing. I have done that before, done it the wrong way around. And just add a pin. So I'm just making sure that these lines are completely parallel or at complete right angles to each other, to make sure that they match. We'll draw our line intersecting or along this diagonal. Add an extra pin to stop it going walkies, and then we'll sew along this diagonal line. Now, I expect if you're a quilter, you want to keep hold of these little triangles that we've cut off the corners. But I'm not. I'm trying really hard not to keep hold of little scraps. So I'm really sorry, I've popped mine in the bin. So I'm just cutting it off to leave a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, cut my triangles off. And if you've ever made bias binding, then you will know how to do all of this. It's the same principle. Okay, so we'll press this seam allowance open and then top stitch. If I can open my seam allowances. Tiny little things, aren't they? This is probably why I'm not a quilter, why I'm a bag maker. Quilting uses tiny seam allowances, doesn't it? There we go, that's nice. Give it a little press from this side as well. There we go. And then we can top stitch either side of the seam allowance, same as we did before. On the second side. Right, there we go. Okay, so we've got 2 halves of a strap. We just need to join them together. So we're going to want to join our pink to our green and our green to our pink. So let's draw a line on the right side at 1/4 of an inch, same as we did before, on the loose end of my exterior. And that can be the piece that we're having vertically. And then on my lining, draw a line 1/4 of an inch away. So all we're doing is exactly the same. We're just ignoring the fact that these have got a piece attached already. So we'll line up these lines, make sure that they are at complete right angles. Add a pin. And then we'll draw our diagonal line, probably with the right end of the pencil this time. There we go. Add an extra pin and sew along that line. Now this is quite a bit more long-winded than just making a regular strap, but I do think it is worth it sometimes to have a nice pieced strap, a little bit of an extra feature. I'll trim the excess off, leaving just a quarter of an inch seam allowance, 6mm seam allowance. I probably could have made my strap tabs out of those triangles, couldn't I? Sorry if you're a quilter and you're shouting at me, don't throw them away, you could use them. I could have used them, couldn't I? I could have had nice piece strap tabs, but probably would have been a bit bulky in the rectangle rings maybe, I don't know. Right, we'll press this seam allowance open and then we can get on with actually constructing our strap. Press it from both sides, just to make sure it's nice and neat. Okay, top stitch either side of the seam allowance, 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away. Right, there we go. We've got one long strap now. Lovely. So now all we're going to do is draw a line along the centre halfway up. So our strap should be 4 inches wide. So we're going to draw a line 2 inches or 5 centimetres away from the edge. It's a little bit hard to do on my small table here, but I'll just keep moving it so that it's in camera shot as best I can. I'm just going along the entire length of the strap. There we go. Right, actually I'm going to move my tin, I think, because I don't need that just yet. Okay, sorry if that was a little bit loud. What we're going to do now, we need our iron. Again, if you've got an ironing board, then this will be so much easier than my tiny little pressing mat. All we are going to do is fold each long edge into the centre and press. And that's all I'm going to do on both sides, the whole length of the strap. So feel free to fast forward me if you get bored easily, because it's not the most exciting content. Right, I'm thinking I should maybe move my cutting mat just for the amount of steam that I'm getting on my table here. Okay, so now I'm going to fold it in half again along that centre line and just give it another press. Right, there we go. And I didn't scald myself once, which is very, very, very unusual. Okay. Right. Sorry, just move my iron out of the way, get myself back in position. Didn't think it was probably a very good idea to have all of that steam on my cutting mat. Right, so at this point we have got our raw edges folded into the centre and then folded in half again. What we're going to do now is we're going to fold it back on itself so that those folded edges are together and the raw edges are out, and then we're just going to stitch along the end using 1/4 inch seam allowance with our regular stitch length. And then we can just trim these ends, trim these corners like so. And then I'm just going to fold it out. Get my turning screwdriver again. I really must find my proper turning tool. And make sure that's pushed out nice and straight. And that will give us a nice, neat, finished end there with all those raw edges hidden inside. I'll just clip that, hold that together, and we'll sew the second end, or the other end. I say second as there's more than one end, there's only two ends on this strap. So we fold it back on itself so that the folded edges are together and the raw edges are out, and then just sew along the short end using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we'll give this a nice trim, cut these corners off just to reduce the bulk inside that strap end, and we can turn it right sides out, and I'll just clip that to hold it together. Now what we can do is sew around all 4 edges of the strap and just treat it as one regular strap. So I'm going to start around about here on the opening. No, I'm not. I'm going to start on the green end, I think. But I'm going to start on the open side. I'm going to sew along the open side, along the short end at the bottom, and back up the closed side, so that I'll sew around all 4 edges. And it'll be nice and neat, and all the raw edges will be enclosed inside the strap then. So I'm using my top stitching stitch length, and I'm sewing 1/8 of an inch or 3mm away from the edge. Right, there we go. So that's our lovely finished strap. I'll just trim these extra threads off. Really pleased with how that looks. I think that looks great. Right, so decide which end you want to be sort of doubled up underneath. I think I'm going to have my green end doubled up underneath because the majority of my bag is green, and it'd be nice to have a bit more of the pink showing. So what you need is your strap slider, just one of these, and we're going to pop the strap through from the back like so, and then through the second section and fold it over. Now, does it say how much to fold it over by? 2 inches, so it's 5 centimeters. I like it when I put these details in my patterns because then I don't have to work it out. Right, so I folded it over and we're just going to stitch that to secure it. Except I put my clip on the wrong side. There we go. You can rivet this if you prefer. There's nothing to say you have to stitch it. So that is as far as we're going with this strap at the minute, and we'll finish it off a little bit later in construction. Okay, so once you've got your buckle added, you can place this to one side for the moment, just smug in the knowledge that you've done your strap and you are ready to attach it later. You've done the boring bit. I find strap making very boring. So I can feel very pleased that I have done that bit. Right, all that we need to do now is attach our exterior to our lining. So retrieve your exterior and your lining. My exterior I need to turn right sides out now. And I'm going to poke out my bottom corners, make sure they're looking as good as I thought they were. Yep, great. Okay, right, so what you need to do now is retrieve your lining, and then we'll attach these two together.